One celebration, one moment when everything goes wrong. That's all it takes to transform the happiest day into an unthinkable tragedy when hidden dangers lurk beneath perfect wedding plans. These are the stories of 6 people who went to celebrate love, but never made it home. It was June 14, 2015, at a private estate in Napa Valley, California. The grounds were prepared for an evening wedding reception, with manicured lawns converted into a formal event space. String lighting hung above banquet tables and gift displays, while a live band performed near the rear of the lawn. Near the center stood a 15-tier champagne tower on a steel platform, rising nearly 9 feet. Earlier setup revealed minor instability, but assurances were given that the structure met load standards, and it remained in place. James Paulson, 34 years old, was the groom. As part of the planned reception sequence, he had been encouraged to pour the top tier of the champagne tower himself for photographs and video. The moment was positioned as a symbolic transition from ceremony to celebration, and guests were already gathering in anticipation as the band paused and phones were raised. The estate lacked an elevated platform or built-in staging, so a 6-foot aluminum ladder was positioned beside the tower as a temporary solution. James climbed carefully, holding a single Magnum bottle as he reached the upper tiers. Guests formed a wide semicircle roughly 12 feet away, leaving a clear space beneath the structure. Footage from multiple phones shows the scene unfolding steadily, with no visible panic or disorder. As James began pouring, champagne flowed through the upper glasses as intended. Midway through the pour, he adjusted his footing on the ladder, shifting his weight slightly to maintain balance. His free hand reached out and made contact with the steel frame of the tower to steady himself. That brief lateral force transferred into the platform's rear support, which contained a latent weld defect at its joint. The compromised weld failed under the combined side load and off-center pressure. The structure lurched sharply before collapsing forward. James fell with the tower from a height of approximately 9 feet, striking the corner of a marble-topped gift table head first, as glassware shattered across the reception area. The impact was immediately followed by movement from nearby guests rushing toward the scene. Within seconds, a guest with prior medical training reached James and began assessing his condition. He was unconscious, exhibiting irregular gasping respirations and abnormal limb rigidity. Blood pooled rapidly beneath his head, spreading across the marble surface. The reception halted immediately, and guests were moved away from the scene as emergency services were contacted. Paramedics arrived about 15 minutes later, due to the estate's remote location. James was unresponsive, with fixed, dilated pupils and no reaction to light. Airway support and intravenous access were initiated before transport. He suffered repeated cardiac arrests en route. The medical examiner later confirmed death from massive traumatic brain injury, including skull fracture and epidural hematoma. An investigation later confirmed that the platform's rear support leg failed at a defective weld joint. Review of smartphone footage allowed investigators to reconstruct the collapse sequence and confirm that lateral force applied during the ceremonial pour triggered the failure. The wedding reception was permanently canceled, and the estate was cleared that evening. The incident prompted changes in safety protocols for tiered display structures at private events, including stricter inspection requirements and restrictions on elevated ceremonial participation. It was April 8, 2016, when Piper June, a 28-year-old wedding videographer specializing in cinematic storytelling, arrived in Savannah's historic district for a destination wedding. Known for her artistic vision, Piper had built her reputation through social media marketing and word-of-mouth referrals. The bride had hired Piper for $5,800, specifically requesting footage of their departure in a horse-drawn carriage through the cobblestone streets. Piper had driven 7 hours from Charlotte, viewing this as both a professional opportunity and a chance to create portfolio pieces. Earl Simmons, a 67-year-old carriage driver with 23 years of experience, operated the white carriage pulled by Duke, a 12-year-old Percheron. During preparations, Piper noticed Duke seemed agitated, stamping his hooves and tossing his head, but Earl assured her this was normal excitement. Piper positioned herself in the front passenger seat beside Earl, her camera stabilizer mounted and recording as they departed with the bride and groom seated behind them. Her equipment captured the peaceful journey down the historic street. The footage shows their carriage traveling approximately 200 yards when a 4-year-old wedding guest broke free from his mother and ran into the street chasing a balloon, appearing suddenly from between parked cars directly in Duke's path. Earl pulled hard on the reins as Duke reared up, his front hooves lifting high off the ground in a near-vertical stance. When Duke came down, he bolted forward in panic, surging into an uncontrolled run, estimated between 12 and 15 miles per hour. Piper's camera recorded the violent bouncing over uneven cobblestones as Earl pulled repeatedly on the reins. The horse failed to respond and continued forward over the uneven cobblestones. At a nearby downtown intersection, Duke veered sharply left without slowing. The footage captures the carriage tilting onto its right wheels at a steep angle before the camera was thrown from Piper's hands as she was ejected from the elevated left side. Wedding guests reported that Piper was thrown several feet through the air, landing on her right side on the cobblestone street. Her head struck the rounded edge of a cobblestone with devastating force. A physician assistant among the wedding guests reached Piper within the first minute, finding her unconscious with rapid, shallow breathing and blood flowing from a severe head wound. The bride and groom immediately ran back to assist. Emergency services arrived within several minutes due to the downtown location. Paramedics found Piper unconscious with severe brain injury indicators. They immediately applied cervical spine precautions and established intravenous access while preparing for transport. During transport, Piper's condition worsened, with unequal pupils and rising blood pressure. Imaging revealed severe head trauma and brain swelling. Despite emergency surgery, she never regained neurological function, and recovered footage confirmed the carriage's loss of control. Investigation revealed Duke had no prior history of bolting incidents, but the sudden appearance of the child triggered an instinctive flight response. Authorities concluded the accident resulted from unpredictable animal behavior, prompting renewed safety discussions and voluntary protocol updates among local carriage operators. It was March 11, 2017, at a beachfront resort in Key West, Florida. The property had been booked for a destination wedding, with guests arriving throughout the morning as staff prepared for an afternoon ceremony. Inside the resort, activity centered around guest rooms as families dressed, coordinated schedules, and handled last-minute details before heading to the venue space. Mason Gray, 41 years old, was the father of the bride. A licensed electrician with nearly 2 decades of trade experience, he was known among family and friends for stepping in whenever something appeared unsafe or poorly installed. He was staying in the honeymoon suite reserved for his daughter and her spouse, using the room briefly to change into his tuxedo before the ceremony. While preparing, Mason noticed the bedroom ceiling fan wobbling and emitting a grinding sound. Intermittent flickering near the mounting bracket suggested a loose connection or damaged wiring. With the ceremony approaching, and no maintenance staff immediately present, Mason chose to address the issue himself rather than report it. He repositioned a wooden chair beneath the fan to gain height and reached up to inspect the mounting assembly. The circuit breaker supplying the room remained energized. A hallway security camera later showed Mason entering the suite alone shortly before the incident, after which no further movement was recorded from the room. As he examined the fan, he found the junction box cover missing, leaving internal wiring exposed. A ground wire had come loose and was no longer properly secured, creating an unsafe condition that should have been enclosed. Standing on the chair, Mason grasped the metal mounting bracket with one hand while reaching into the junction box with the other, attempting to stabilize the loose conductors. In that position, his left hand contacted an energized 120-volt conductor, while his right hand remained in contact with grounded metal. The electrical current passed across his chest, immediately causing involuntary muscle contraction. Mason was unable to release his grip. The sustained current disrupted his heart's electrical rhythm, triggering ventricular fibrillation. His body stiffened as the current continued to flow for several seconds. As his weight shifted, the chair beneath him moved, breaking electrical contact. Mason fell backward onto the tile floor below, striking the ground hard and remaining motionless. Moments later, family members entering the room found him unresponsive. Chest compressions were started while help was summoned from nearby guests and resort staff. An automated external defibrillator was retrieved and applied, delivering shocks as directed. But Mason did not regain a stable heart rhythm. Emergency responders arrived within minutes and initiated advanced cardiac life support. Medications were administered, and repeated defibrillation attempts were made. Despite prolonged resuscitation efforts, his heart never returned to a sustained, effective rhythm. Mason Gray died as a result of a fatal cardiac arrhythmia caused by low-voltage electrical injury. Examination later identified electrical burns on his hands consistent with contact points and a current path across the chest. A subsequent inspection of the room identified electrical code violations, including improper grounding and exposed conductors within the ceiling fixture. Investigators concluded that contact with an energized wire while simultaneously grounded created a lethal pathway through Mason's heart. Following the incident, the resort implemented electrical safety corrections to prevent similar hazards. It was July 22, 2017, when Maya Steele, a 26-year-old floral designer known for her artistic approach to botanical arrangements, arrived at a Santa Fe ranch venue for a wedding celebration. Her unconventional style incorporating native plants had earned her recognition across the southwestern United States and a $6,400 commission. Maya had driven her vintage 1978 Volkswagen van, converted into a mobile floral studio, to create ceremony installations across the 40-acre high desert property. The bride, a gallery owner, had hired Maya after discovering her work at an art show. After completing her installations, Maya moved her van to the vendor parking area, a gravel lot on a slight incline approximately 200 yards from the ceremony site. She noticed the catering company's large box truck parked on the same slope, with only the parking brake engaged, and no wheel chocks. A security camera mounted on a nearby utility pole later confirmed Maya had been standing at the rear of her van with the back doors open, organizing her equipment to photograph her floral work before guests arrived. At approximately 4:46 p.m., the catering truck's parking brake failed, later determined to be caused by severe cable wear and mechanical degradation. The 26-foot box truck, weighing approximately 14,000 to 16,000 pounds with catering equipment and food loaded, began rolling backward down the 6-degree slope toward the vendor parking area. The truck gained speed as it rolled approximately 80 yards down the incline, reaching an estimated speed of 10 to 12 miles per hour. Maya remained focused on her equipment with her back to the approaching vehicle, unable to hear it over ambient noise from the live mariachi band. A DJ working at the event noticed the runaway truck and shouted a warning. Maya turned toward the sound rather than away from the danger, and the truck's rear bumper struck her from behind at mid-back level, crushing her between the vehicle and her van. The impact drove Maya's van forward approximately 3 feet before both vehicles stopped, trapping Maya's body in the narrow gap. The security camera recorded the DJ and other vendors rushing to the scene, attempting unsuccessfully to push the heavy truck backward. With help, a hydraulic jack was used to lift and secure the truck, allowing Maya's extraction minutes later. She showed catastrophic pelvic and spinal injuries, profound shock, and no measurable blood pressure. Emergency services arrived 11 minutes after the initial impact due to the remote ranch location. Paramedics found Maya in profound shock from internal bleeding and immediately established IV lines, while applying a pelvic binder to stabilize fractures. Maya suffered cardiac arrest during preparation for helicopter transport, as her blood pressure collapsed from uncontrolled internal bleeding. CPR and medications briefly restored circulation, but she could not be stabilized. The medical examiner later determined she died from exsanguination caused by severe pelvic fractures and abdominal organ injuries. The recovered security footage provided crucial evidence of the brake failure and collision sequence. Investigation revealed the catering company had a pattern of deferred vehicle maintenance, leading to enhanced parking protocols requiring wheel chocks on all inclined surfaces. It was June 3, 2018, when Caleb Hart, a 38-year-old wilderness guide and outdoor education instructor, arrived at a Blue Ridge mountain overlook near Asheville to officiate his cousin's wedding. Known for his extensive knowledge of mountain weather patterns, Caleb had been conducting outdoor weddings as a side business for 3 years. Caleb had spent 15 years leading expeditions throughout the Appalachian Mountains. His cousin Nathan had specifically requested him to officiate after they bonded during a backpacking trip. The ceremony was planned for the exposed granite outcropping that offered 360-degree mountain views. The wedding photographer positioned herself approximately 50 feet from the ceremony site, using a telephoto lens to capture the intimate 34-guest celebration. Her camera was recording continuously as dark clouds began building to the west during setup. Weather forecasts had predicted thunderstorms after 6 p.m., but the ceremony was scheduled to conclude by 4:30 p.m. Caleb mentioned the approaching weather but agreed to proceed, when assured they could finish before storms arrived. The ceremony proceeded normally, with Caleb standing at the highest point of the overlook, approximately 15 feet above the seated guests. The bride and groom faced him, with the mountain vista stretching out behind them. At approximately 4:12 p.m., the first thunder echoed across the valley. The storm had moved faster than predicted, and within 90 seconds, the sky darkened dramatically, and gusty winds increased to approximately 15 to 20 miles per hour. Light rain began falling, but Caleb continued rather than evacuate. At approximately 4:14 p.m., a lightning bolt struck the granite outcropping at or immediately adjacent to where Caleb stood. The discharge lasted only milliseconds, delivering high-voltage electrical energy that traveled through his body and into the granite beneath his feet. Caleb's clothing was scorched and damaged by rapid heating, and his shoes showed signs of steam-related rupture. The strike caused sudden, violent muscle contraction, leading him to collapse backward and come to rest several feet away. He lay motionless on the granite with no visible breathing or movement. The lightning strike also created ground current that radiated outward through wet granite, delivering shocks to multiple guests within 40 feet. Several guests within roughly 40 feet were knocked to the ground by ground current. 3 lost consciousness briefly, while others experienced intense muscle contractions, temporary paralysis, ringing in the ears, and visual disturbances. The groom's father, a retired Army medic, regained enough motor control within several seconds and crawled to Caleb's position. The photographer's camera recorded him checking for vital signs and finding none, then beginning CPR while shouting for emergency services. Multiple guests attempted to call 911, but cell coverage on the remote overlook was unreliable. It took 4 minutes before someone's call connected, while the medic continued chest compressions in the pouring rain. Paramedics reached the overlook roughly half an hour after the lightning strike and found Caleb in cardiac arrest with a systole, a non-shockable rhythm indicating no organized heart activity. Advanced life support continued for more than 20 minutes, but his pupils remained fixed with no signs of neurological response. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner later determined the cause of death to be cardiac arrest resulting from a direct lightning strike, with associated electrical burns and severe brain injury. The incident prompted renewed safety reviews, leading regional venues to strengthen evacuation protocols for exposed outdoor ceremonies when thunderstorms approach. It was August 18, 2018, at a garden wedding venue in Portland, Oregon. The afternoon ceremony was planned among landscaped walkways, flowering beds, and open lawn space, with guests arriving early under clear summer skies. Vendors moved between preparation areas as final details were completed ahead of the ceremony. Jade Palmer, 31 years old, was the wedding's makeup artist. She specialized in bridal beauty and had built a steady reputation over 8 years through referrals and online visibility. The bride, a fashion blogger with a modest following, hired Jade for $2,800 to provide makeup services for herself and 6 bridesmaids. Jade had spent the morning indoors completing makeup applications and preparing her emergency touch-up kit for use during the ceremony. The venue maintained beehives roughly 80 yards from the ceremony area, positioned near sections of the garden planted with flowering vegetation. Jade noticed the hives upon arrival but gave them little thought. She had no known history of severe allergic reactions and had worked numerous outdoor weddings without prior incident. As guests began settling into their seats, Jade walked through the garden toward the ceremony site, carrying her kit. A guest live-streaming the event later provided documentation of her movement through the grounds. Jade chose a path bordered by dense lavender beds, an area commonly used as a walkway and not marked as hazardous. As she crossed the path, Jade stepped onto a concealed ground-nesting yellow jacket colony hidden beneath the plants. The disturbance triggered an immediate defensive response. Within seconds, a large swarm erupted from the ground and attacked her. Jade screamed and attempted to flee. She was stung repeatedly on her legs, arms, neck, and face as she ran, managing to cover roughly 30 yards before collapsing near the edge of the lawn. Wedding guests rushed to assist her, initially observing intense pain and localized swelling consistent with multiple stings. Within approximately 90 seconds, Jade began showing signs of a severe systemic reaction, driven by the heavy venom exposure. Her voice became hoarse as she struggled to breathe. Raised red hives spread rapidly across her chest and abdomen, expanding outward as swelling progressed. Over the next few minutes, her breathing deteriorated into high-pitched wheezing and stridor, indicating worsening airway obstruction. She became dizzy and disoriented, staggered briefly, and then collapsed fully onto the grass. Her lips turned blue as oxygen deprivation intensified. An emergency room nurse attending the wedding immediately recognized anaphylaxis and directed others to call 911 and search for an epinephrine autoinjector. Jade was positioned on her back, but swelling of her tongue and throat made airway positioning ineffective. Her heart rate increased as her body attempted to compensate for falling blood pressure and worsening hypoxia. Approximately 6 minutes after the initial stings, Jade's pulse weakened and became difficult to detect. When effective circulation could no longer be confirmed, chest compressions were initiated while emergency services were en route. Paramedics arrived several minutes later and encountered severe airway swelling that made ventilation extremely difficult. Epinephrine was administered as the primary life-saving intervention while resuscitation continued. Although circulation was temporarily restored, Jade remained deeply unresponsive. She later died from catastrophic brain injury caused by prolonged oxygen deprivation following anaphylactic shock triggered by multiple yellow jacket stings. Subsequent review found the venue lacked emergency response protocols for allergic reactions despite known insect populations, leading to updated hazard communication and safety planning requirements. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.